I love camping. It's been something I've done with my family and my friends since I was a little kid. I am a huge fan, but I am not a huge fan of bad weather. I'm kind of a bougie camper sometimes. I don't like being in a tent when it's raining or there's a lot of wind. I like to have some space and comfort when I camp, which I know I'm sure some people say ruins the whole point, but that's not how I feel. And so I've always wanted something a little bit more robust than a flimsy tent to go camping in. I think what fits the bill best is a camper trailer. So I'm gonna try building one. But not just any kind of camper trailer. I want something that's light and easy to move around, partly because my car can't tow all that much weight, but also just because I like the idea of it. And looking online, I found there's something called a foamy trailer. That's a trailer that is built out of XPS foam. You may have seen this at big box Home Depot, Lowe's type stores. Now at first, this may seem like kind of a weird idea because it's not the strongest stuff in the world. Like I said, not the most robust stuff. But the internet has a lot of techniques for how to make this super lightweight stuff actually strong enough to use. So I want to build a trailer, but I also want to find out if this building material is actually strong enough to stand up to the elements, to stand up to use over time. Because that is not exactly what screams sturdy building material to me. Now there's tons of different trailer types and shapes. What I want to build is called a teardrop. That's where it's like rounded, but bigger at the front than at the back. Anyway, Keith had an idea for a different type.
Another popular shape is the square drop, where it's very angled and has that cool angled front and a few things on the exterior as well, so.
Fortunately, our editor has thrown up a graphic on the screen, so we don't have to describe them well. So we're both gonna be building trailers, we're both gonna be using this XPS foam, and we're gonna see if we can make this stuff strong enough to hold up to being a trailer.
We both had different ideas of features and things that we could put on our trailers that people would enjoy, and so Nate's gonna do a few things and I'm gonna do a few different things, and you guys can pick and choose maybe what are cool things you guys could do for your own builds.
Now, the wonderful people online say that you can take this foam and turn it into all sorts of different shapes by cutting it and gluing it together.
A very popular choice online is Gorilla Glue, so we're about to do a little test to see just how strong this stuff is together.
Hey.
Hopefully stronger than that.
All right, so I'm just gonna glue one piece of this foam to another piece of the foam, and I'm not gonna do much prep work, but I am going to do a little bit of sanding on the smooth face of this foam so that hopefully it gets a little bit more purchase. Not even a lot of sanding, just, there you go. That's enough. I've roughed up the surface. Hopefully that'll be enough for the glue to grab onto. I'm just gonna take a couple of pieces of tape. Now, while this Gorilla Glue is supposed to work really well on this foam, it's not quick. It takes several hours before it's really set, whatever it does. So while it's doing its thing, we are going to go pick up the metal for our trailers, because we're building the trailer part that the whole camper goes on top of as well. Okay. Oh, done moving steel. I need lunch. On a bigger project like this, where I'm like running around and doing a whole bunch of errands, I often don't like to take the time to properly cook stuff. So it's really convenient that I'm partnered with today's sponsor, Huel. It's not that I don't like making food ever, but if I'm in the middle of something, I don't like to stop doing that thing to make food and then eat. And I like to just have food and eat it quick and get back to what I'm working on. So a full meal that I can throw together really quickly is just very convenient for an on-the-go lifestyle. Today's choice of flavor is the salted caramel. I think that one's my favorite. I've also got the chocolate and cookies and cream, a few great flavors. This is the one I'm doing today. Huel keeps me going on my projects because it's a full meal in one shake. All the nutrients and energy I need in one shaker bottle. It gets you your protein, carbs, vitamins, fiber, etc. If I'm running to the hardware store to get more supplies, or maybe I'm taking a break and I'm just gonna go on a hike, clear my head, this is something I can take with me. As you can see, I'm working with their Black Edition powders right now. They've actually got a really good deal with these going on right now. All right, we need to check on how our glued up foam is doing, but guys, seriously, being able to have a full meal in 30 seconds is a no-brainer. We've got the nice convenient QR code on the screen or the link down in the description. You can try Huel for 15% off right now using my code nfti15. Seriously, if you're like me and you don't want to stop your whole day to make food, but you also don't want to just go hungry, you absolutely should try this stuff out. QR code here, link down in the description, nfti15 to get 15% off your order of Huel. Try it, throw it together on a busy day and see how much it helps. It's way easy. Okay, we have really let this set all the way. Let's get the tape off and see how we're doing. I mean, yeah, it's definitely on there. Like you can see some of the glue. This glue foams up a little bit as it dries, and so it's made its way out both front and back. We can clean that up, but the real test is just how well it's attached. So I'm just gonna try and pull this apart and see what it takes to break through the glue. See how there's foam visible, but no glue? The glue held, the foam tore apart. That means that the glue is a stronger connection than the foam is. So while there's no need to be worried about the strength of the joints where the glue is, it's still a problem that the foam itself is not exactly very robust. Fortunately, there are solutions.
The internet has invented poor man's fiberglass.
So this right here is a block of the same exact foam with the protective coatings that we're going to be adding. And this is actually just cloth, glue, and house paint.
It is surprisingly durable, honestly.
So we've got canvas cloth that we've glued onto the surface of the foam using wood glue, and then we've just used house paint in several layers to flood that cloth and let it dry up and become sturdy and waterproof. And
you got this. You got this.
I made zero progress trying to break. Like, this is not hard to break. This is very, like, I didn't get anywhere with it. So while it's not the most durable thing in the world, it's a whole lot better than the foam, and apparently it's strong enough to build with.
Quick strength test.
Not bad. Held up just fine. Time to start building the trailers.
The main body of the trailer is going to be about 8 feet long. That's not including the tongue. That's that front part that extends out in front of the actual like cargo space, but 8 feet, rectangular frame. So I need to cut off 2 pieces for the 2 sides that will each be 8 feet long. And I'm going to just be using this chop saw for it. And I'm giving myself just 1/8 of an inch extra from what I'm measuring. I can always grind or cut it down later, but if it's too short, can't do anything about that. This is my axle, and it has fixed points that I need to use to mount everything to. So that's what's going to determine how far apart my bars are going to be. And between the centers of these is 46 inches. So that's how far apart my main 8-foot side runners on my trailer are gonna be.
On the frickin' dot. Bullseye.
All right, the very basics of the very beginning of the trailer. So all of these pieces have to get welded together, but first I have to do measurements to make sure that they're all lined up correctly, that they're all spaced out correctly. I have to clean up all of the spots where I'm gonna be doing welding on every piece of metal. I have to make sure everything is square. I have to make sure everything is elevated off of this floor because it's not level. And I'm gonna wanna be using things that I can use to adjust and make sure everything is in the same plane. And then I can tack weld it, readjust, weld a little more, readjust, weld a little more in a cycle until it's really welded up and extremely coplanar and square in all the right spots. This can take some time. I think I will start by cleaning up all of the parts that will be welded so that once I get them into the right spots, I don't have to take them apart and then clean them again. Yeah.
Well, cleaning all these spots with a flap disc, including inside the little nooks and crannies and crevices, it's not the easiest thing, but it did do a good job.
Oh, nothing like a few minutes of hard manual labor to remind you why you hate hard manual labor.
That's a rough tack. A good measure of whether you have everything square is that the diagonals are the same lengths. I'm like 1/16 of an inch off, which is pretty good for having just thrown it together. Now I'm just gonna do some slight tapping adjustments until I'm getting the exact same measurement.
Bullseye.
Oh, exact same distance. Now, if you are not familiar with welding, you may be wondering why, if I have it in the right spot, why don't I just weld everything really quick? Welding creates heat, that's how it works, but you don't just connect metal pieces together when you weld them, you heat them up, and when metal gets hot, it expands. So the expansion, it doesn't look like much, but if I were to do like a long run of welding all in one spot, it could put enough heat into the metal that it expands enough to push everything into where I don't want it to be. So I just do a little bit at a time, measure, verify everything's in the right spot, and then do a little bit more at a time. And it's good to alternate corners when you do that. So I'll do one corner, then the opposite corner, then I'll go sideways in the opposite corner. That just helps the movement stay to a minimum.
half beautiful, half hideous.
Well, I've got the main rectangle, which means I'm basically done with the whole trailer. It's finished, guys. Let's take it camping. Just hike out into the woods with this and lay down on it. What could be simpler? Next up is clean up all of the welds that are on the outside, like the top and back surfaces, like front and back surfaces, everywhere that other stuff is gonna be touching. I need to clean that up with the grinder so it's all like flush and smooth like, which so fun. Gotta love grinding.
I was actually really pleased with how long the flap discs I was using worked. So if you're interested in doing any metalworking, the link for the ones I used are down in the description.
All right, the main rectangle frame is welded up. It looks good. It's quite square. I'm very happy with how square and coplanar everything is. Time to start adding some other things. For example, this right here is a 2x2 tube that's going to run the whole length of the trailer from the very back all the way to the front of the tongue. So that's gonna be attached all the way across, and that'll be something that adds quite a bit of strength everywhere. And so yeah, I just have to center it on everything and get it welded on.
Having fun?
So much fun.
Beautiful.
Gonna put the trailer hitch on the front, and that actually gets held on by bolts. But just to line everything up while I drill the holes for the bolts, I'm going to tack weld it in place. And also, this is zinc coated. And if you weld something zinc coated, it creates zinc fumes, and those are really bad if you breathe in. So I am still gonna tack weld it, but I'm also just gonna hold my breath every time I'm welding and then like back up and let the air clear through a little bit before and I'm really only gonna do like a couple little spots, so it's not gonna be much. Safety third. Okay, so now I have to drill 4 holes into this tube stock. It's thick stuff. It's not particularly hard, but it's thick. So I've got a punch, I've got different levels of drills, and I've got these continuous smooth drill bits, and I don't know what's gonna work best for getting into it, but I'm gonna try it. Here goes.
First, gonna use this punch to try and make a center mark.
Those are close to center. Okay, we're gonna start with something fairly small and just work our way up.
Since mounting a hitch is a really structurally important part, we did want to make sure we used grade 8 bolts. Installing the axle, it's extremely important that it be perfectly perpendicular to the direction of travel, so I had to really do a lot of careful measuring. And also, because I've got that tongue bar that runs the entire length of my trailer and sticks out the bottom, I had to raise up the mounting points for the axle itself. So you can see I'm welding those onto the side to make sure I'll have enough clearance, and everything worked pretty nicely. And I had to get a little bit tricky with some cutting and grinding at some weird angles to make these side step wheel well holder bits. They aren't 100% perfect, but they ended up being pretty good, and they're very sturdy. I might have given myself a little bit more clearance on my wheel wells than I really needed. They're fairly high above the wheels, but you know, they'll stop mud from splashing, and definitely don't have to worry about the wheels hitting them. Even more welding and grinding, just getting everything all perfectly lined up, and we flip it over and do all the spots I missed there.
Generally speaking, I was building mine in a very similar manner to Nate's, but I wanted to do 5x8 because I wanted to have a full-sized mattress in mind. I measured everything corner to corner to make sure it was all square and lined up perfectly. I welded gussets into each corner as well, and then also welded on gussets to my tongue bar. Making sure we use those grade 8 bolts. I attached light mounts on the back, as well as fabricated up my spare wheel mount.
I still need to make one of those. With everything welded up, it is time for paint.
Nate's already started, but getting a head start on things. Our trailers are all welded. We need to clean them before we paint, otherwise the oil that's on top of all of them is gonna not make the paint stick, and we don't want that.
So yeah, lots of washing, lots of sanding, degreasing, and priming. Whole lot of layers and steps here.
I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup, trying to get rust off of this before I paint the whole thing. So I've just got a sandblaster into a bag of sand, and it does a great job of taking rust off of the weld bead. Also does a great job of
spraying sand everywhere, and
I don't know how many times I'm gonna have to shower to get this out. Ooh.
It's a lot less fun than going to the beach.
should I be wearing more protective clothing? Gloves? Closed-toed shoes? A face mask? Maybe.
Take my safety tips from I Did a Thing.
All right, time for paint.
We started with several layers of primer.
We tried to use truck bed lining. There's a rattle can version, I think made by Rust-Oleum, that we sprayed on first, but that ended up being really weak. Like it was terrible. So we then went over everything with the roll-on truck bed liner. The roll-on brand is Herculiner, and that worked way better.
We got trailer light kits online and then just wired everything on the underside and through tubes as much as possible.
We had added some little tabs to make better attachment points. Keith had more of them than me. I mostly just zip tied everything to my frame.
I wanted to attach my subfloor with thick bolts.
My trailer is actually not going to have a subfloor, it's just going to be the bare metal. Okay, the trailers themselves are now complete, so it's time to give them a quick test as we head to the big box store to pick up some supplies. Need a lot of foam for all of the, well, everything on these trailers. I'm fortunate to have a dad who has a large CNC machine and he likes me, so he lets me use it. I got to cut out these custom shapes on it, and I gotta say, this foam cuts extremely well on a CNC. So now that I have general shapes milled out, you can see I've got like the seam running along here, but it doesn't actually go all the way through. Now it goes all the way through. I need to clean up that edge. So I got a blade, then I gotta get the pieces that are all gonna go together and glue them so they're permanent. First I'm just rough cutting and then I'll actually carefully clean up the edges. So all of these panels are going to get glued together to be one big panel, and I had to piece it together in slightly weird ways, and that's not ideal, but it should work just fine. Gorilla Glue bonds this stuff together really strong, like the bond is stronger than the foam itself. Now I can apply Gorilla Glue in here, so I'm gonna put glue in this one, bring it up, tape it, then I'm gonna sort of arch this one so it's kind of going like that. Put glue in that crack, flatten it back down, put tape over that, and then I'll let that set for a couple hours. Okay, that's one. The other wall, it's the same process, but there is a door cutout. So I really only have this section that I have to glue on the big panels, and I don't love that that's gonna be kind of a little bit weaker, but it should be pretty strong once everything is all put together. So I have my panels, and now I need to make what I've been calling the canopy. That's just the top, the roof part, but it's not only roof because it starts like down here. So it's the wraparound part, and I want that to be perfectly shaped to the wall pieces. So what I need to do is temporarily put those wall pieces where they're going to be and make them sturdy enough that I can build around them, but also they have to be able to come down afterward because I have other things I have to do before I permanently attach them in place. So I'm gonna try and just put them up and hopefully they'll stay in place well. These little half-sharp bamboo skewers did a pretty good job of holding things in place. So now I have to get sheets of foam bent to fit around the body of this. And I'm gonna do it in several pieces and glue them together. And this was my test piece. So I've got a router and I'm gonna route lines that just go all the way from one side to the other, going most of the way through the foam, but not all of the way. And I have this nice tapered router bit, and I made this test piece here. So I found that this bit takes out about 9 degrees per pass. So if I put one line down a board and then bent it to close up that gap that it made, it would change by about 9 degrees. And I know that because I made a whole bunch of cuts and I measured that where there are 10 cuts, it's a 90-degree angle. So I can use that to calculate how far I need to make the curves go, how many cuts I need. And so I have the model on this on Fusion where I've designed everything, and I've segmented out the whole canopy to sort of be in a few different pieces with manageable, measurable curves. And so the first one, which is gonna be up at the front, I need to take a piece of foam that's about 40 inches long, but I'm gonna start with it a little extra long, so maybe 43 inches, and then I need to evenly space 9 cuts going across it, because it needs to bend not quite 90 degrees.
Hope that's enough.
Beautiful. Look at that curve. First panel is cut. I'm liking the curve on it. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put glue in all of the cracks, and then I'm going to use tape to attach it to the side of the body. I'm not going to glue it to the side of the body yet, but I'm going to tape it to the side of the body so it stays in the perfect curve as the glue cures all the way around. All right, we got part 1. And I think it looks pretty good. I like this. It's gonna be interesting because of how I'm putting the curve into it with straight lines going across. It's actually segmented. Like, it's not a perfect uninterrupted curve. So it's kind of like a low poly curve. I don't think there's anything I can really do about that, and I'm not gonna try. I'm just gonna let it be a low poly curve. Love it. I think gluing up these panels was one of the most tedious parts, trying to get the glue down into these narrow cracks.
I got my door lined up. Yeah, all of a sudden I've got this crazy mustache in this video. It's because I got cast in a musical and they needed me to have some 15th century facial hair from France. I got my door lined up how I want on this wall, and I'm doing 2 windows on the opposite wall. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want those lined up on the foam so that I can mark out the holes and get the holes cut before I assemble everything, so that I'm not trying to cut holes in the vertical wall. It's a lot easier to cut holes in the horizontal. Most of the main pieces are now cut. We've got the 2 big sides, 4 panels, 4x8 with the front slant. I already took measurements. The door fits right where I need it to be, so.
All right, moment of truth. Let's see if the hole fits. Hey!
Since I'm just doing the square drop trailer, I don't necessarily need any CNC cutting, I'm just doing everything by hand. I was very meticulous with my measuring on how big these cutouts needed to be for the windows and the door.
Some of these curves couldn't be done very well with the tapered bit I was using before. It would either be too big of spacing to really go around this tight curve. So I did some passes with the bit and some with the circular saw to get sort of a hybrid between the two. Look at that pod. I got all of the dome pieces shaped, and then I took everything apart because it's not ready to be together permanently yet. The next step is actually installing my chair support pieces into the walls. This one I cut out as a test, and then I have one more that I have to cut out, and then those are going to get glued into the recess. Then when I do the covering that goes over the foam, that's just going to go right over the MDF board as well. These chair-shaped pieces I'm putting into my walls are part of a feature that is not going to be all complete yet, but you'll see it in the future, and I think it's going to be a really cool way for me to have sort of a chair bench thing that I can put up and take down inside my trailer. This board here is the very bottom of my pod, I'll call it. I don't want it really nicely sealed up so it's going to be damage and weather resistant, so I'm using an oil-based boat paint, doing a couple coats of that to really seal up this OSB. We are now ready to prep for the poor man's fiberglass. Now for the skin, the canvas that gets glued onto the foam, you have to wash and dry and iron every piece of the canvas before you start gluing it, or it's gonna go on really terribly wrinkled. Before I glued everything on, there's a little bit of prep work. I spackled all of the gaps, and then I sanded all of the surface of the foam so that the glue will stick to it better. I was actually surprised how fast the sanding went. So now I'm just using a paint roller to apply the wood glue. I'm using Titebond 2 glue, and I did a really thin layer. If I had to go back and do it again, I would actually let it go on a little bit thicker than I did. I apply a thin layer, I put the cloth over it, I iron it in place, and it goes down pretty smooth. Getting all of the cloth glued onto these first panels went pretty well. You know, I'd never done it before, and I think I definitely learned some techniques that I'll be able to use on the rest of it. Now I'm just going around and I'm gonna trim off all of the excess cloth on this one. It just needs to be flush to the foam here. This panel that I just did is the inside of the wall. My floor is gonna be made of 3 layers. It's got the subfloor that I painted black before, a layer of the foam, and then a layer of particle board on top of that. It will have mechanical bonds later. For now, it's just glued together with some spray glue. Putting the walls back up, but this time it's permanent. One wall up. One more normal wall, and then the canopy's like a wall and the ceiling. Again, using the bamboo skewers to help keep everything nicely aligned, and then the tape holds it in place as the glue dries. Just adding the canopy pieces on one at a time, and again, lots of tape to hold it in place, make sure that curve holds as the glue dries, and when it does, it's surprisingly strong.
Since I'm doing the square drop, everything lines up pretty nicely with all the straight angled cuts.
How many bottles of Gorilla Glue did we go through?
At least 3 or 4.
But that is for 2 trailers.
Now we get to do the poor man's fiberglass over both of our trailers.
A little bit of prep work with some spackle and sanding before we try gluing on the fabric.
Lots of ironing.
So much ironing. My first wall, I glued the canvas on with it vertical, and so I just did a little bit at a time. I was trying to make the seam in the cloth like in a nice straight line. So I would like glue a foot, and then I would put the cloth on it and iron it, and I'd do the next foot up and the next foot up. And it worked, but it was very slow and inefficient. For the other wall, I just turned the whole thing on its side. I painted glue on the whole thing at once and just rolled the cloth on a little bit at a time while ironing it. That worked way better. And I've got the cloth wrapping around to the bottom so that it has a really good hold and is extremely waterproof. The cloth on the walls gets trimmed off where it reaches the ceiling, but the cloth on the ceiling overlaps onto the walls. Again, this really just helps make sure it's really waterproof and that there's no gaps where water can seep in anywhere. This is definitely a process that occasionally benefits from having more sets of hands. We did go through a pretty good amount of wood glue. I think we used, what, 2.5 gallons total?
Yeah, it was around 2.5 gallons. And again, that was for 2 trailers. You do want to start from the bottom and then work your way up so that the canvas folds are waterproof when it's all said and done.
I will say that while we used this super cheapo iron for applying the cloth to the sides, and it worked just fine, when we're doing the actual ironing, we did end up buying a much nicer iron. We got like an 1800 watt iron, and that went so much faster for pressing the cloth before we applied it.
I flipped mine over and of course started with the bottom, and then I just poured on the wood glue where it was gonna go and did sections at a time. Ironing it in place is very important to get a smooth finish, and it also helps seal the glue into the canvas.
To clarify, you need to iron it before you put it on and then also iron it in place.
Once the bottom was done, I did all the sides. You want to pin everything in place and make sure it lines up right, and then just go around little by little, making sure all the edges are down after you do the top.
We have canvas on the whole outside. All the sides, all the top. It is ready, and I'm going to start doing the paint. So I've got like 5 gallons of paint. I don't actually know how much it's gonna take. For the first coat, I'm going to use a thinning agent to help it penetrate more into the cloth, and then subsequent coats will be undiluted, and I will also probably do some sanding in between coats. I'm gonna start with the first one, and I am excited and nervous about this. I don't know how it's gonna go.
Here goes.
tip. Use different color paint so you know where you're...
Right, this is exactly the same color as the canvas, which is not what I was aiming for. It's a little hard to see where I have painted and have not. It did end up being diluted both with the thinner and a little bit of distilled water. The raw canvas drinks up this paint. It took a really heavy coat to get anywhere with it, so I think I used more paint on the first layer than I did on the next 3 layers combined. The next day, after letting the first layer of paint dry, I quickly sanded it and then applied undiluted paint layers on top of that. And I wanted a layer of the canvas on the inside of the canopy, so I had to prep and sand that as well. And I started with a rag tied around my head, but the glue didn't end up dripping on me like I was afraid it would, so I took it off.
I wanted the poor man's fiberglass in all the window wells and door well to seal things up correctly. Thankfully, the paint dries really quickly here in the Utah sun.
And then more sanding and more layers of paint. One of the things that I cut out with the CNC was a spot for this door frame to go. It's a 2-part door frame, inner and outer, and I just clamp it all together. Hope that goes well. Well, that is part 1. We've got the trailers functional. We've got the pods that go on top of them, and I am super excited with where they are. But we are not done.
We clearly still have a lot to do. We gotta make them livable. We need to put in windows, finish our doors,
My pod is not attached to my trailer right now. I can just lift the whole thing up off of it. Not exactly great for driving around.
Gotta do electrical, we gotta make them weather tight.
So part 2 is going to have getting them to a usable point. So part 1 was showing how we built this much, and part 2 is going to be making them actually usable.
And then taking them out and trying them. Lot to do. Let's do this.
Thanks for watching. Get cool merch, link in the description. As always, a huge thank you shout out to all of our supporters on Patreon. You guys are amazing, and if anyone out there is interested in joining my amazing supporters, the link for my Patreon is also in the description.